I'm Lieutenant Colonel Mike Taylor. I'm the Task Force Senior Trainer for the WARHOG Maneuver Team here at the Joint Multinational Readiness Center, Hohenfels, Germany. This morning I'm sitting here with Captain Wheeler Brown, a forward support troop commander from 1st Squadron, 91st Cavalry Regiment, from the 173rd Airborne Brigade, who is operating under the Griffin Lithuanian Brigade for exercise Allied Spirit. Good morning, Captain Brown. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience so far in the Army?
Good morning, sir. So I started my time in the Army in the 82nd Airborne Division. I was a maintenance control officer, an FSCXO, and then an S4 for 1325 Air in 2nd Brigade Combat Team. After that, I went to Maneuver CCC at Fort Benning, and then I came to the 173rd, where I was the operations officer and the plans officer for the 173rd BSB. And then after that, I came up to Germany to be the Dark Horse Forward Support Troop Commander for 191 Cav.
All right, could you tell us about this rotation in particular? How do you think it went? What did you find most valuable or most challenging here?
So I think the rotation overall went pretty well, sir. And we had another rotation that we did 4 months before that allowed us to really take AAR comments and lessons learned and reapply them. And it was a night and day difference, honestly. So we started the rotation very spread out. We had a lot of our supplies kind of cached in different areas, and we had our troops spread out into different nodes for survivability purposes. As the exercise went on, though, we ended up kind of collecting things and focusing things a little bit more in just 1 or 2 nodes, mainly because we were in a totally different fight this time than we were the last time we went to an operation. And so that was a big lesson learned for me, is the importance of understanding the difference between offense and defense and how that impacts the way sustainment has to array itself across the battlefield.
Right, so what did you find most challenging about this rotation?
The most challenging thing about this rotation was the interoperability, sir. We were under the Lithuanian Brigade, like you said. In 191 Cav, we had a heavy weapons company from another infantry battalion in our brigade who had different processes for maintenance and sustainment, which felt in some ways like working with a different country. We also had a Czech KOI of about 18 BMPs, which is equipment that I never thought I would work with in the Army. And it was really awesome to bring them into the fold, but we had, every day there was an interesting little thing that we had to work through, a problem set we had to work through for them. We had 3 Italian tanks, so we had to prepare tracked recovery processes, and we had to be ready to refuel very, very thirsty tanks compared to the Humvees that I'm used to. And then we had a Lithuanian support element attached to us and a Lithuanian wrecker attached to us in the FSC. So it was just this like panorama of different countries across Europe coming together for this fight. And everybody had different unique requirements. And so we forecasted for them as best we could. I'm really glad that I brought all of these different countries and XOs and first sergeants in about 5 days before we deployed in front of a big whiteboard to just write out what we think they'll need by X day. Even then, though, we still had to reforecast things on the move constantly and just like hook and jab the entire time. I'm really glad we got to do an interoperable rotation, though, like this, but that was the biggest challenge, sir.
Yeah, this rotation was also structured a little bit differently than some other rotations where you were able to spend a lot more time on the defense. How do you think that went, and what were the differences between this rotation and maybe previous rotations for
Sure.
you?
Yeah, so being on the defense was made different classes of supply matter more. So I'm used to fuel and ammo being the most important thing for a mainly offense-focused operation. This time, the first thing I was worried about going in was getting Class 4 to the warfighter as quickly as possible so they could build tactical obstacles. And so that was a process we had to work through because most of my troops are mounted reconnaissance troops who don't build tactical obstacles. You know, it's their job to either go to ground or move if the enemy finds them, and we've just never had to worry about this before. So the first sergeant and I had to work through the logistics and the discipline, honestly, behind like paratroopers building obstacles that they're not used to doing. Additionally, I'm used to sustaining a Cav squadron in the offense, so that concept where I'm kind of like very spread out and survivable is good when you are ahead of the infantry flot. Doesn't make quite as much sense when you're behind an infantry flot in a more static defense.
Yeah, it's also really hard for any organization to transition from that defense to the offense, where you're attempting to consolidate, reorganize, and then immediately jump, maintain contact with the enemy, and then jump into the offense. How was that with respect to commanding a forward support troop here?
So we had to make sure that we had everybody with the maximum amount of supplies that they needed for that offense before we transitioned. However, you can't give them too much stuff. There's only so many Javelins and Stinger missiles in the Army. And so we have to work through that problem with the XOs and the first sergeants of how much can you actually carry and how much are you going to leave in a cache that could be discovered or will be forgotten about when we're in a breach and we're not thinking about the 10-digit grid to where our last 84 millimeter cache might be. So we had to be very disciplined about that. Maintenance came into play there too. We have to be the voice to the task force to do 5988s before they step off on the offense. It's like I'm telling warfighters to do paperwork before they step off, but it's so important. I mean, that physical workflow is what's going to get those trucks brought back up and parts brought into the box. So the logistics makes it to the right place at just the right time for that part to be hung before they LD into that offensive operation, sir.
Yeah, well, if I remember correctly, as you were preparing to enter the box, you were attempting to baseline maintenance from some of these organizations, and you're faced at one point with maybe 4 working combat vehicles in one particular company out of 16 or so.
Yes, sir.
But you were able to very quickly resolve that issue. How did you do that?
So I do it as a commander by trusting my maintenance technician and my maintainers, who are, I think, the best in the Army, and by verifying what they're actually doing, though, and then by applying, my command abilities to make sure we get over 3-foot walls when parts get hung up at an SSA, which happened 2 times. There was a civilian in SSA who said, "I'm sorry, I can't issue this to you." It's a matter of me making a phone call, making sure it moves. But the other way we got around it was by having L&Os in the right place, and that's another big takeaway from this exercise. We had a maintenance technician for our missile systems. He couldn't work on missile systems, so we redirected him to basically sit with the CSSB and be our liaison to go to the SSA and draw parts and bring them forward. And it seems like that's something that should happen flawlessly if you just order a part. 8 years of being in an FSC, I know that is not a guaranteed thing that's going to happen. So having the right leaders in the right place helped with that a lot. And then just hard work from the maintainers, having a very good first sergeant who knows how to manage a work-rest cycle and work maintainers through the night, but also get them bedded down so that they're ready to deploy into a defensive operation in a few days.
What surprised you the most throughout the exercise?
So what surprised me the most was probably the fact that my position was never found by the enemy. So some of our caches were, and that was an amazing lesson learned for us for how we do caches and what we leave in caches. But the actual FTCP, we never met our displacement criteria. As far as we know, I'm curious to see if we were spotted by UAS or if maybe SPF did know where we were and we just weren't identified as a target of value to attack. But we were able to have very stable sustainment operations because we just were never attacked in our base.
All right, so what would you recommend to another forward support troop commander or forward support company commander preparing for an exercise here at the Joint Multinational Readiness Center?
Sir, I would recommend if you're going to have any other countries integrated, pull those leaders in as early as you can. Get them, even if it's on a WhatsApp call, start talking to them about what their requirements are and how they do things, and make sure their logisticians are a part of your planning as well. And I would say make sure you're a part of your S3's planning for offensive operations and defensive operations too. That's a hard lesson learned from 2 rotations now. I think we've gotten a lot better, but please, if you see on the calendar that there is an IPR or an MDMP event, don't wait for an invitation. Go to that event. Even if you're just sitting in the back rows, the FSC commander, I guarantee the S3 or the XO is going to look at you and ask for your feedback, and that feedback is going to become critical at a very decisive point during the operation.
Yeah, those are great points and some unique challenges here at the Joint Multinational Readiness Center that you might not find at the National Training Center or the Joint Readiness Training Center. So, hey, I appreciate your time and your thoughts and a great exercise, Wheeler. Best of luck on your way home.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate it.